Hello from wherever you are, and welcome to Let's Play Games. I'm John McFarland, Adult Services Librarian for National Public Libraries, and I hope you'll join me in learning or rediscovering some of the more common and uncommon games out there. This time, we're going to go into one game that almost everybody's played in some form or fashion with a night in: Monopoly. We're going to go through each little detail if you've never played before, and some refreshers for some answers to burning questions on what's a house rule and what's the actual rule. Let's get stuck in. In order to play a game of Monopoly, I need to first show you what's in a game of Monopoly. So we're going to take this step by step. I'm going to show you everything that's on here, and then we're going to show you in detail how to play. So let's see here. It's a pretty standard box to open, and there's quite a bit going on here. So instructional rules, we're always going to need that first. I like having little labels when I have playing. Take this out first. And this is going to be our board. So you're probably familiar most likely with at least the initial look of this board. And it has multi-colors on the side. And I'm going to show this to where it looks like from your perspective you're at the start. That's important to me. So we've got 2 die, 1 to 6. We've got these cards right here, which I will get to in a moment, but we'll go ahead and place them right where the label is for them. And there are 8 pieces that you can choose to play from. So technically you could have up to 8 players. I feel like I'm missing one, but if we do, I'll find one later. But we've got the top hat, the car. This is actually a little new, the T-Rex. Got ourselves a little Scottish Terrier, a penguin, a battleship, and a cat. I feel like I'm missing one somewhere, but we'll see it here in a moment, I am sure. So I'm just going to put that in front. And at the beginning of the game, you figure out who's going to play what piece. So that's probably the first of many negotiations you're going to do in a game of Monopoly. Now, these pieces are individual cards, and their importance is that you can purchase each of these spots on the board for yourself. So we've got utilities, railroads, and then actual properties. So anything with a card is available for purchase. And to show you the way that this looks is, so we've got Baltic Avenue here. It's got a little brown label so you can color coordinate where it is on the board. It gives you a title, which is also here, and the initial cost of purchasing it. So if you land on that piece, it's going to cost $60 to actually purchase the piece. And you would get what's called a title deed. Now this title deed has some information on it, but we'll get to that in a moment. We also have these little red and green pieces. These are hotels, and these are houses. So you can only start building properties after you have a monopoly on the entire color set, and technically after all of the properties have been purchased. So there's 2 kind of different phases to the game. The first is buying all the properties on the board, and then after that it's trying to bankrupt your friends and family. So you need 4 of these little houses in order to build a hotel. So until you have 4 houses on each property, it would go here like this, you will not be able to build a hotel. What I'll go ahead and tell you is one important part of the game is there's going to be a little scarcity involved. There are only a certain number of houses. There are only a certain number of hotels. If there are no houses available for purchase, you can't buy a house until somebody builds a hotel or has to get rid of that house for whatever reason. We also lastly have money. This is going to be an important part of the game, is how much money you have, and the goal is to make sure that your friends have no money left. So we've got a couple different color coordinations and some denominations for you. So there's 1s, there's 5s, there's 10s, there's 20s. The 50s always give me trouble, no matter how much I try. 50s, 100s, and 500s. So one of the things you first discover is who is going to be the banker. And I forgot about the little rubber ducky piece. I knew I was missing one. So there's one person whose entire job in this game is going to be the real estate person. They are going to keep on a hold of all of the houses and hotels and all of the property deeds. Another player who should be separate from that is going to be the banker. They are going to be in charge of all of the money distribution. So what you do is after you've picked out the banker, you've got these convenient slots here. I like putting them in order so that way I can remember them later. And you want to make sure that whoever is the banker is pretty good with counting money, as usually this helps keep up the pace of the game. Which means usually I'm never the banker, I'm usually the real estate person. Yes, I will out myself like that. So what we're going to do is now that you've got all of the little elements that you need on the board, I'm going to go ahead and get this set up, and then we will figure out who plays first, how to start the game, and how the game is played. More on that in a moment. How did we get to Monopoly, the modern game? Well, first, I have to take you back to 1903 and a woman by the name of Lizzie McGee. Now, she developed a game under the idea of what's called Georgism. The idea that although value is generated from companies, the profit should still belong to society. So, she developed a game in 1904 called the Landlord's Game, and sought out a patent and made a rudimentary version in 1906 when it really started actually selling, where there were two versions. One, the version that we're going to learn about that's more familiar with, that's much more pro-capitalist, and another version of the game where when a monopoly happened, everyone profited. So, two different versions, but that first version is the one that we're really going to focus on. But how did it get towards its modern game? We'll find out in a moment. I went ahead and divvied up the monies to each player. We're going to have 4 players with this. We're going to have player, let's see, we'll try and do it in order here. Player 4 is going to be this top hat. Player 3 is going to be the vehicle. Let's put them forward. Player 2, we'll have them be the cat. And player 1 can be the T-Rex. So we'll put these pieces off to the side. And so each player was given a starting amount of money, which equals $1,500. And I know that it's not a dollar symbol, but just for ease of use and my own sanity, we're going to use dollars for this. So a total of $1,500 will be applied. So 2 500s, 4 100s, a 50, a 20, 2 10s, a 5, and 5 1s. So each player is going to start off with that particular total. Now, already dropping pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in stacks. So let's talk about the topic that you always have to figure out at the beginning of a game. House rules. So according to what is on the Monopoly instruction booklet, it says to keep your game short and sweet, don't use house rules. Always auction when someone doesn't want to buy the property they've landed on. Never loan money to other players or make deals to not charge each other rent. Never put cash in the center of the board. You don't get a bonus for landing on free parking. I am not a fan of these anti-house rules. As long as you come to an agreement before the game, I personally say use whatever rules you want. We will play by the way that they want us to play for this, but as long as everyone agrees to a rule and everyone thinks it's a fair rule, I've seen more than enough where people will make various agreements to make whatever deal work. Do what's most fun for you. That's the big part. But we will abide by these rules for the spirit of the game. So what we're going to do is figure out who goes first. So I do have player 1 here. I'll have player 1 roll first. But we will then go clockwise around. It doesn't matter as long as you agree to a direction, but I always switch up clockwise and counterclockwise with the many games you can learn to play. So player 1's going to roll first. The 7. So 7 is the number to beat. Who goes first? We'll do player 3. 5, so it's still player 1. 7, so if they don't beat a 7, we'll have another roll. 5. So player 1 will roll again. 10, pretty good numbers. And player 4 with a 5. So player 1's going to go first. I like this. And actually, for the fact that we have numbers, I will just agree that they agreed to go this direction. So we're going to have player 1 go first. They're going to roll the die. This added up to 11. They will move 11 spots forward on the board. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So each direction, each edge is about 10 pieces from the other. So you can also use that way. Say you were sitting here and rolled 12, you can do 10, 1, 2. It helps you at least figure out if, say, I rolled a 10, I know that Kentucky Avenue would be 10 slots away. So we come first to St. Charles Place. No one owns that property, so you have an option. You can purchase the property for $140, or it goes up for auction. Now, since I'm the first one to land on it, I'm going to want to buy this property because anybody who lands on it after will have to be charged the rent for landing on that property. So as it stands right now, it's $140 to buy, and rent is $10. So each time somebody lands on that, it's $10 guaranteed. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do 100, and since I don't have two 20s here, I'm going to give the banker 150. So we'll put that back and put that back, and then I will receive 10 in change. So especially at the beginning of the game, money will exchange hands pretty quickly. So now player 1 has St. Charles Place. So throughout the course of the game, the idea is to get monopolies. So everything set up where you have the entirety of the color structure. So if I get States Avenue and Virginia Avenue, I will then have a monopoly of the purples, and then I could buy houses and hotels to increase the amount. So if you have the entirety of the color set, as they refer to it, the rent goes from 10 to 20. If you have one house, it goes to 50, then two houses 150, three houses 450, four houses 625 with a hotel, $750. So people really don't want to land on your space. Now, there's also a cost. Each house will cost $100 each, and each hotel will cost $100 after that. So I'm going to put this here, and it'll be player 2's turn. So the cat, 6, so 5. Like I mentioned, the railroads here are always 5. 6, so Oriental. Yes, I'm definitely going to want that as well. No change required this time. And so the property manager will find Oriental Avenue and place it there. So in the early game, these pieces go fairly quickly. So everybody's going to be purchasing. Now, notice this 11 here. So let's do this for the sake of simplicity. Player 3 will now land on St. Charles Place. They now will owe the owner of St. Charles Place 10. So they're going to go in, and they're going to give a 10 to player 1, the owner of it, who will immediately happily take that $10 back. So they're already recouping their investment into the property. Player 4 here will then roll with 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes there's going to be some instructions. So they landed on the income tax space, which means they must pay 200. Not exactly the piece you want to land on at the literal start of the game. So with the way that some people play with house rules, the income tax and luxury tax will go in the middle and sweeten the pot for this free parking. When somebody lands on free parking, I'll explain that. But we're going to play it that it goes immediately to the bank. But because they rolled doubles, they get to go again. Now, they have to be cautious, as much as you can be cautious in a random game of chance. If you roll doubles 3 times, you'll be going to this lovely jail spot here that will be ready for you. So they avoided it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just because you land in this spot doesn't mean you automatically go to jail. You go to this just visiting. So you don't lose your turn. So for player 4 here, it's not exactly the best way to start the game. But you know what? We're trying to manage as best we can. So I'm just going to put everybody in their corner here. And it goes back, now that everybody's gone once, to player 1. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Community chest and chance cards. These are individual spots where you don't know what the result is. You could gain money. You could lose money. You could be told to go to a particular space. You could have some cards that don't necessarily apply to you yet, especially if you don't have houses or hotels yet. But we don't know. So we're going to draw from this community chest. So here's what it says. Bank error in your favor. Collect $200. So player 1's not going to mind that too much. An extra 200 never hurt anybody. And you put this at the bottom. And you place it right here. Now, in both the community chest and chance cards, there are what are called get out of jail free cards. If you get those, you have definitely won the day, because you will be able to hold that in place for a long while. Now we'll go to player 2, and they'll do 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's now States Avenue, which is another one of the purples. And by purchasing it, they will make sure that they have a trading piece that they will be able to later give inside the game. So say that we get towards the end of the game, and let's see, I'll put this up. One of them is one away from a monopoly. Now all of a sudden there are trading pieces. So we've got States Avenue here. So they now have 2 properties. And we'll keep on going for player 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Tennessee Avenue, which they are going to absolutely purchase. Side note, one of my favorite properties, just because of how often it seems to land. That will be 180. Whoop, almost lost it there. So we will put that in the bank. So you see how quickly the banker and the realtor get busy quick. And player 3 will have Tennessee Avenue. And we'll keep on going with player 4, who is just visiting in jail. That's 5, that's 6, that's 7. So see how you can kind of shorten your turn a little bit. And they get community chest as well. And the aforementioned get out of jail free card. So you get to keep it until you need it. You can trade these, and you may have to sell it as a part of you losing the game. So we're just going to keep that right there. That is an important piece to have. So let's hit the pause button for a moment, because I've got a little more history to tell you about. So, Mrs. McGee continued developing the landlord's game into the 1920s, and it saw some mild popularity as board games really took off in being sold in stores and becoming a more modern pastime as they were more easily produced. We have to fast forward to 1932. a man by the name of Charles Darrow plays the landlord's game. And after its recent rule changes involving houses and rent money, he thought it was a great idea. So he tried buying the rights. Well, Mrs. McGee wasn't willing to sell to him, so he did what any person would do. Completely stole the game, completely stole the rule set, changed it a little bit, and then put in a patent request in 1935, which you can actually find at the US Patent Office. Now, why do we have problems here? Well, he continued to market the game as though it was his own. But more on how we righted some wrongs a little bit later in a moment. Let's keep going. Now we've had 2 full turns. I want to get us either to someone going to jail or someone passing go. So we're back to player 1 here. I'm going to keep on going. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 2. And that's 20. Now towards the beginning of the game, you're going to notice that your funds are going to dwindle quick. But typically, it's a good idea to purchase as much as you can at the beginning, so that way you have properties already set up. And you can sometimes try and auction pieces off, because if you say, I'm not interested in this piece, there's a bidding war that happens between these 3 players. And whichever one wins, you start with increments of 10, so in theory you could get a property for as little as $10. That never happens, people bid on it. But you're trying to get little pieces as quickly as you can. So we'll move on to player 2, who will roll an 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the rent on Kentucky is 18. So there's a 10, there's a 5, and 3 1s. So inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to get the need to sometimes exchange money out to the bank. There will be points where the bank will run out of particular denominations. It's at that point usually that play will stop, and you will figure out how to assign funds. So this will be 7, 1, 2, 5. This is one of the railroads. And the railroads are probably an interesting monopoly in that they're all across the board. And it increases in price the more you have. So, let's see, this is B&O Railroad. Get a chance to show this to you. So the rent starts out at 25 regardless. If you own 2 railroads, that doubles to 50. If you own 3 railroads, that doubles again to 100. A monopoly is 200 anytime someone lands on the railroads. But that's 2 properties for them. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. Everybody's getting nice and cozy on Kentucky Avenue here. So that's another 18 aforementioned. So that's why it's usually good to get these properties early, so where people make it back that yes, you are getting it 1 or 2 at a time, but you can fairly quickly get a lot of income just from the initial properties and landing on it. And what'll happen is over the course of the game, let's see, it's player 1 again, yes. So that's 10, moving over to Pacific. So is that 300? That is exactly 300. So they're going to do that again. And it helps that they got that community chest earlier because it almost pays for itself. Oh, here we are. So player 1's doing pretty well at the start here. And this is Pacific Avenue to have some property. And let's keep going. Player 2 will land right on Pacific Avenue. So player 2 is getting a little unlucky here. Now that's going to be, they'll ask for change, usually from either the banker or the player. So if they say, I need change, player 1 has more than enough 1s. So they'll hand it back and they will happily take that 10 off of their hands. That's player 2. We'll go on to player 3, who's on the railroad, who will just avoid going to jail. And notice, this is how it scales. where they will need to take in 100 here. And usually they can kind of pick the denominations, so let's have them do, they'll get 80 back, so that would be, and then the 20 to pay it off here. 20, 40, 90, and another 10. So notice they lose all those small denominations pretty quickly. And then player 4 will do a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're to one of the utilities. And the utility is 150. And it's got another unique way of dealing out rent. So I'll show that to you. So what you do is if you land on this and you have just one of these utilities, you get 4 times the amount shown on the dice. So 7 multiplied by 4 if someone else landed on would be 28. If you own both utilities, it is 10 times the amount shown on the dice, making it 70 in rent. Now for railroads and the utilities, there's no houses you can build. There's no... Sorry, I forgot to put this up. That was my fault. And that's usually with money exchanging quickly. It can sometimes be where stuff is on the table. You just gotta make sure you're playing it right. But now, finally, everybody has at least 1. So we're back to player 1. And they roll a 9. This gets them back to go. Another house rule that some people have is if you land on go, you get double the pass and go, which is 400. But instead, we are going to have 200 to player 1. So this is through just about the entirety of the board. Let's go ahead and get, we'll stop actually right here because I think this is a good point where you see now one entire movement around the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties are off the board. And this is basically the cycle that will repeat pretty significantly. As we get towards more complex things, we'll go into more detail, but let's take a step back, pause for a moment. So I talked about Mr. Darrow and his patent of the game of Monopoly. Well, he did successfully manage to market this game to Parker Brothers in 1936. They did a little digging, as places should do, and found that Mr. Darrow was not the person who came up with the base idea of the game, and they were none too pleased. So they went to Mrs. McGee and offered to buy the rights, and they did for a whopping total of $500, but still gave some of the credit to Mr. Darrow, but at least righted that wrong somewhat. And this game continued to gain its popularity as a commercial product, and it even saw some benefits in World War II. Why? Prisoners of war were given Monopoly sets to pass the time as a part of humanitarian rules that you could give things to prisoners of war. Well, what the British did is they actually snuck materials that you could use to escape prisoner of war camps inside Monopoly sets, and you saw it used extensively, which I thought was pretty cool. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Now that we've gotten the game started, we will continue to develop as necessary. I'm going to make sure that I hit every last piece of rules that I can, and you see how random this game can truly turn out to be, along with some strategies you can use to play better. I'll see you next time.